What's up, otakus? It's your tour guide here. Yeah, we're going live on Monday because I got a package. Normally, I guess I'm pretty. I mean, it depends. I've done content on Mondays before. Um, I just kind of I don't have like a set schedule on when I go live. Generally, it's like if I have time in the evenings, which on most occasions I do. Evenings are sort of my after we put my son to bed. It's kind of like my wife goes off and does her thing, and I come in here and do my thing. So, um, yeah, I mean, aside from maybe doing work occasionally, I'm usually just uh, doing stuff related to comic books, I guess. But yeah, this is a very, excuse me, this is a very special moment um, because I think last year, around the midpoint of last year, I um, unveiled my 100th Jim Lee book to the collection, and that was a big milestone. I mean, um, it taken a while to get there, but again, I'm focused on the Jim Lee collection, and we're continuing to add books. I mean, it hasn't really it slowed down a little bit in terms of the rate at which we're picking up books, just because I feel like I have a lot of the stuff that I need. So I'm just being very selective and picking up key books here and there. But yeah, I mean, like pretty much, the things left on my radar are some of the bigger books. But this one's been on my radar for quite a bit, quite a long time. And I've always kind of reserved, um, tried to pick it up um, naturally in the wild, because it's not that it's like the most common book in the world, but I feel like it's a book you can find probably in the dollar bins or the bargain bins, get it really cheap. Um, and we've always been meaning to get it um, since a certain point last year. So what we're going to do is we're going to unbox it, and we're going to reveal what it is, and then I'm going to talk about the significance of this book to my collection, and to me personally, what it means to me personally. So it's a Jim Lee book, and let's just open it up. Now, this came in a manila envelope. It looks like it's in, it was packaged in between cardboard, not even. All right, well, it got here without issue, it looks like, but not the best packing job. Um, it looks to be okay. Now, I will say this about well, it looks good. I think there's some issues here at the top. I'm gonna have to get in a new bag and board to see. Spine looks pretty good. Corners look decent. Yeah, condition overall pretty good, very decent. All right, so I'll reveal what the book is. I recently purchased this off of eBay. Again, one of the two books I picked up on eBay ahead of the Emerald City Comic Con. I probably shouldn't have picked it up, but again, this was there for a really good price, along with the other book. In a previous video, I revealed I got Marvel Fanfare, the Black Widow cover, iconic cover by George Lopez, signed copy of that for $15. I couldn't pass that up. This one, I felt the same. I felt like I couldn't pass it up, and that is um, Wildcats X-Men Silver Age. And this one is the Jim Lee. So we have two versions, two covers of this. There's a cover A and a cover B. Cover A is done by Jim Lee here, and cover B is done by Neil Adams. So this marks the first collaboration between Neil Adams and Jim Lee in comic books. So Neil did a great cover, and then this is Jim's version. So I've been meaning to get the Jim Lee. It's a great grifter cover there. And what makes this really special is it's signed. It comes with a COA. It's a signed copy by Jim Lee. It looks like it was signed sometime in the mid-90s, which thanks Trev, which would make this, again, Jim's signature kind of changes over the years. This is sort of a transitionary from early 90s to what's we now know as a signature, kind of in transit. So I guess in terms of that signature, it's very rare. It's not your typical Jim Lee signature. It is in gold. And I picked this up for $17 plus shipping and tax. So I ended up paying a little over $27 for it. For a signed Jim Lee book, that is a bargain in my opinion. Now there are 2,500. This is a numbered copy. This is 80 of, I don't know if you can see that right there. You see, it's 80 of 2,500. So it was numbered and signed by Jim. Again, this is a period. This book came out right in 97 or so, maybe 96 or 97. Just right before the DC acquisition of Wildstorm. So, key piece of sort of Wildstorm history here with the Marvel crossover. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about Jim Lee and Neil Adams and really their what kind of unites them in a very interesting, yeah, interesting piece of coincidence. So, okay, as you know, this is the first time they collaborated in comic books, but they have a lot of things in common. I think the first thing they have in common is they both represent they kind of represent the top sort of cover artist or artist of their generation. I mean, you talk about Neil in that late silver to early Bronze Age and how big of a presence he was in the Bronze Age. He was pretty much one of the top artists of his era or his generation. And the same can be said of Jim Lee. You know, Jim Lee comes in the late 80s, sort of the late copper and early modern era. Same holds true. I mean, really, like, they're literally almost 2 decades out. Yeah, like 2 decades. Neil precedes Jim's sort of trajectory by 2 decades. They kind of come out around the same time. Uh, Neil in the 60s, Jim in the 80s. And again, they make another thing they have in common is they worked for both Marvel, DC, and an independent publisher. You know, Neil went from DC to Marvel to I'm forgetting the name. One of the 70s independent publishers. I'm skipping out on the name right now, but he again did stuff across different publishers, and of course, Jim Lee started out at Marvel. He started Wildstorm, and then that led to work eventually at DC. So very similar career trajectories. Um, in terms of talent, very similar in terms of the fact that these guys were regarded highly as um, one of the top talents in their industry. But I think the thing that really, this is live, CJ, what's up? I think the thing that really, uh, the thing that makes, and I don't know if this was intentional, it may have been intentional, but what they also share is a legacy on Superman. So I'm going to bring your attention to Superman 215 from Volume 1, okay, and Superman 215 from Volume 2. So um, the difference being that, first of all, Jim and Neil were both the cover artists on Superman 215. Jim did the entire work. That's the only difference. Neil was only doing the covers on Superman at the time. But what's interesting is this run. Neil gets his start on Superman at issue 204. Okay. So from 204 to 215, Neil does all the covers for Superman Volume 1. Okay. Minus 211. 211, it's a Kurt Swan cover, but pretty much from 204 to 215, all Neil covers. And then he jumps off at 216, comes back and continues to do covers. But in terms of that run, that initial run, Neil goes from 204 to 215. Well, that's exactly the same numerical run for Jim Lee as well. Jim Lee jumps on at 204 and does this run with Azzarello through 215. So that is, I don't know if it was done intentionally, if it was planned by DC to be done that way, but it definitely links these two artists generationally. And so for me, picking up I just, when I think of Neil Adams and why I like Neil Adams so much is because of my appreciation for Jim Lee. Um, these two guys are really just kind of um, mirrored artists in terms of what they've accomplished and how they've modeled their careers. The only difference really being is Neil grew up in a generation where artists did not get a piece of the pie. Um, they were oftentimes not given the best contracts. They didn't have any ownership of the characters. There was no, in terms of profit sharing, there was none of that. Whereas, Jim came along and really forced a revolution for creators' rights and forced changes in the industry. Now, creators have rights over what they produce and develop, and they do see more um, in terms of like access to their creations. If they're, in terms of licensing and all the revenue related to that, you'll see them get a share of that profit. So it's a very different environment. And I think that's what also, if you can point to uh, things that are dissimilar about them, it's definitely the eras that they were involved in. Yeah, whether it was a coincidence or not, they're linked. They're linked through that connection. Um, Again, sharing that numerical legacy on Superman as the cover artists. Um, which is a really interesting, coincidence because I collect Superman, uh, and I regard Neil's art and Jim Lee's art as two of the best, um, representations of the character in comic books. And so it's real, again, tying it all back, they come together in the 90s to collaborate and do work on what, ironically, uh, an independent publisher and an established publisher crossover collaboration, in Wildcats X-Men. And so, um, this is a book I picked up on the day of Neil's passing, and it's a very special book to me and a reminder of, just that news and that day, and um, reflecting back on the great career of a really an endearing comic book artist. And again, when I picked up that book, I immediately I had the intention of picking up this copy, um, and really almost a year later, we finally have it. It's a signed copy, uh, great grifter cover, and I couldn't be happier. Again, pick this up for $17 for a Jim Lee signature. I mean, Jim Lee signatures for the CGC events, or even at a con event, they're going for 50, right? So to get a signed book under $20 is a real nice pickup. And again, I wouldn't have picked this up before the con if for any other reason than it was a great deal. So um, yeah, I was about $20 poorer going into the con because of this pickup. It just arrived this today, so happy to have that in my collection. But anyway, yeah. Thanks for joining, guys. I know it's a short video. Thanks, Compton, for showing up. CJ for showing up. Trev, and hope you enjoyed my 200th Jim Lee pickup. It's a milestone for me. It's a special book. And again, I just went over um, why I consider this book special, because it represents two of my favorite artists of all time, Jim Lee and Neil Adams, and again, the special sort of connection and bond that these two guys have through their runs on Superman. So, hey, Naman Young, thanks for joining, and yeah, thanks a lot, Trev. Um, yeah, I will be going over another career retrospective with my Jim Lee comic books, with the 200 issues I have, kind of going over that career and the different eras of Jim Lee. So stay tuned. I have a lot of it kind of ready to go. I just need to fine tune some of the editing, but once we do all that, you'll see them come out incrementally, and then I'll post sort of um, a consolidated version and pin it to my channel. So look out for that. All right. Thanks for joining, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.